Liam Thorne leaned back in the back of his sleek black limousine, staring out at the city through the tinted windows. The sky was dark and full of rain. The streets below were a blur, the cars on the road moving like silent shadows. Inside, everything was quiet. Everything except for the numbers on the tablet in his hands. Charts, graphs, deals, success. But none of it made him feel anything. He had everything: money, power, buildings, but it was all empty. Liam didn't feel the joy that most people would in his position. He owned companies, and yet there was no one at home waiting for him. No voice to say, "Welcome home." No laughter or warmth. Just silence. Just empty rooms filled with expensive furniture. He sighed deeply. Maybe it was all too much. Maybe he had made the wrong choices. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen. More messages about business. More reminders of properties he couldn't remember buying. He shut it off quickly, tired of it all. Outside, the rain started to pour harder, and he felt his eyes grow heavy as the car moved through the wet streets. "Long day, sir?" the driver asked. Liam nodded. "They all are." The car moved through the quiet streets, the city's lights flickering through the rain. The sound of the tires on wet roads was soothing. For a moment, Liam closed his eyes, thinking of how he used to feel more alive, back when he didn't have so many responsibilities. But then, something caught his attention. It wasn't anything big, just a small, worn grocery store at the end of the street. The light above its sign flickered in the rain, and the windows were fogged up. But there was something about it, something that made him stare. Then he saw her, a woman, standing in the cold, staring at the window of the grocery store. She looked thin, her coat too light for the weather. Her face was pale, and her body seemed tired, like she had been standing there for a long time. She wasn't looking at people or even the cashier. She was staring at the food, bread, fruit, a simple display that seemed to offer everything she wanted but couldn't have. Liam's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He didn't know why. Maybe it was because something about the way she stood was so familiar, the way she seemed lost in the moment. And then it hit him. He knew her. Her name was Alara. The memory rushed in. He remembered meeting her years ago, at a fancy party, of all places. She was kind, bright, everything he wasn't used to in his world of numbers and cold business deals. She had made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Human, real. She had made him forget, for just one night, how lonely he was. But that was years ago. He had left before morning, leaving money for her studies, thinking that was the end of it. Now, standing there outside the grocery store, she didn't look like the woman he remembered. She looked different, weary, tired, and there was something else. Something he couldn't put his finger on yet. But then, his eyes moved down, and that's when he saw them. For little boys. Identical. Their faces all serious, their clothes messy, and their eyes wide, staring up at the bread and fruit. They looked no older than 3 or 4. Liam froze. It couldn't be, could it? His heart began to race. For boys. They were hers, and they looked so much like him. One had his mother's chin. One had his smile. The resemblance was undeniable. Liam felt a strange feeling rise inside him. Something he couldn't name. His mind raced. The numbers, the charts, the deals, none of it mattered anymore. What he had thought was a one-night mistake, a pleasant distraction, had led to this. "Stop the car," Liam said, his voice sharp, sudden. The driver hesitated. "Sir, I said stop the car." The car came to a slow halt. Liam stepped out into the rain, not caring about the cold soaking his suit. He walked toward the woman, toward the children, his steps unsteady as his heart pounded faster with every step. He reached her. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Alara." She turned, her eyes wide in surprise. Her face didn't show recognition, not at first. But as she looked up at him, something shifted. Her lips trembled, and she whispered, "Liam?" For a moment, the world around them seemed to stop. The noise, the rain, the cars, all of it faded away. The only thing that mattered in that moment was her, standing there with those 4 boys, looking at him like he was a stranger. And then, a small voice tugged at her sleeve. "Mama." Liam's chest tightened. The boy's voice was so small, so innocent. He watched as she knelt down, her hand brushing the boy's head. She smiled, but it wasn't a smile that reached her eyes. It was tired, forced. "Hungry?" the boy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alara's hand trembled as she nodded, trying to hide the sadness behind her smile. "We'll figure it out," she said, though her voice wavered. Liam's heart twisted. He stood there, frozen, as the realization hit him like a punch to the stomach. For years. For boys. They're mine, he whispered to himself. His mind couldn't process it. The world spun around him, and for the first time in a long while, Liam Thorne was afraid. Liam stood in the pouring rain, his suit soaked through, his mind a whirl of confusion. The noise of the world around him faded, leaving only the sound of his heart beating in his chest. For boys. For little lives he had never known. For faces that looked so much like his mother's, and yet he had never once seen them. Alara's soft voice brought him back to reality. Liam, she said again, her voice shaky. He didn't know what to say. He stood there, feeling the weight of what had happened, what he had done, or more accurately, what he hadn't done. He hadn't even known about them. Alara reached down to take the hand of one of the boys, the smallest, who was still looking at Liam with wide, curious eyes. She guided him behind her protectively. The others stayed close to her, their heads down, not speaking, just watching him silently. Liam opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He didn't know what to say, how to apologize for the years he had missed, for the lives he had ignored. He had been so busy with his world of mergers, profits, and endless meetings. Now, all of it seemed meaningless, empty. He was a man who had built an empire on numbers, but now all he could see was a family, his family, that he had never known. Alara, he said finally, his voice hoarse. I didn't know. I didn't know about them. She didn't look at him. Her gaze stayed on the boys, the small family she had built alone. I didn't want you to know, she replied, her voice cold. But there was something else there too. Pain, and maybe a little fear. I never wanted you to know. I didn't think you'd care, and I didn't want to ask for anything from you. Liam's chest tightened. The words hit him hard. He had been so selfish. He had thought one night with her was nothing more than a fleeting distraction. But it had been so much more. I didn't. He stopped himself, feeling the sting of his own ignorance. I didn't realize how much I had hurt you. How much I'd hurt them. Her eyes flickered toward him then, her expression guarded, but the pain in her gaze was clear. You didn't hurt me, Liam, she said quietly. You just walked away. You didn't even look back. But they've been here. They've been my responsibility. And they deserve more than just your guilt. Liam swallowed hard. He felt the weight of the responsibility pressing on him now. These 4 boys, his sons, had grown up without him. And now, they were standing there in front of him, unsure, fragile. I'm sorry, he whispered, the words feeling empty. But he said them anyway. I want to make it right. I want to be here. For you, for them. She shook her head slowly. You can't just show up and make everything okay. It doesn't work that way. Liam didn't know what to say to that. He didn't have the answers, but he knew one thing for certain. He had to try. I know I can't fix the past, he said, his voice soft but determined. But I want to be here now. I'll do whatever it takes. Alara didn't respond immediately. She just looked at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to read the sincerity in his words. She didn't trust him, not yet. And honestly, Liam couldn't blame her. He had abandoned her once. Who was he to think he could just walk back into their lives? But he wasn't just a billionaire anymore. He wasn't just the man who controlled a world of wealth and power. Standing there in the rain, he was a father, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he had missed so much. We'll be fine, Alara finally said, her voice quiet, but her resolve clear. We've always been fine. Liam watched as she turned away, leading the boys back to the small, weathered grocery store. He stayed where he was, his feet frozen in place, his mind racing. He had never been good at this, at relationships, at being there for others. But he wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not when he had finally realized what really mattered. Alara was right about one thing. He couldn't fix the past. But maybe, just maybe, he could start making things right. He could be there for them now. The car door opened behind him. Sir, are you coming? George, his driver, asked, looking back at him through the rearview mirror. Liam didn't answer immediately. He didn't want to leave. Not yet. Not when there was so much to fix. But as he turned back toward the limousine, something caught his eye, a small scrap of paper in the rain. He bent down to pick it up. It was a receipt, worn and torn, but the name on it stopped him cold. For your studies. Thank you for a lovely evening. The words hit him harder than anything else. The note he had left for her all those years ago. The note that had sealed his decision to walk away. He hadn't thought it meant anything, but to her, it had been everything. And now, looking at the boys, his sons, Liam realized he had to do more than just apologize. He had to prove to them that he wasn't just a stranger, that he was their father. He looked back at Alara, standing in the doorway of the store, her back to him. She hadn't turned around, but he knew she was watching. And somehow that was enough. He turned toward the limousine, his mind made up. I'm going to fix this, he whispered to himself, more determined than ever. The next morning, Liam sat in his penthouse, staring out the window at the city below. The sun was rising, but the view felt colder than usual. He had always found comfort in the sight of the city's sprawling towers, the buzzing life below. But today, everything felt distant. The silence in the apartment seemed louder than ever before. His thoughts were consumed with Alara and the 4 children who shared her life. The children who, by chance, were his own. It had been a restless night. He couldn't stop thinking about them, about the things Alara had said, about the way the boys had looked at him. Curious, hopeful, yet cautious. They had no reason to trust him. And perhaps neither did Alara. But he couldn't let that stop him. Liam stood up from the table, the sound of his chair scraping against the floor breaking the quiet. His hand hovered over his phone. The temptation to reach out to his assistant and dive back into work was strong. But he didn't. Not today. Today was different. Today, he would take a step forward. A real step. He grabbed his coat and left the penthouse, stepping into the cool morning air. He didn't know what exactly he planned to do, but he knew he couldn't just wait for Alara to come to him. As the elevator doors closed behind him, Liam's mind raced. He had no experience with children. He had spent his life running businesses, making deals, climbing the corporate ladder. But raising a family, building a connection, that was completely new to him. When the car pulled up outside the small grocery store, Liam saw Alara right away. She was standing under the awning, her back slightly turned as she spoke to one of the boys, her hands moving gently as if trying to calm him. Her voice was soft, too far for him to hear, but the way she spoke told him everything he needed to know. She had become their everything. Liam stepped out of the car and walked towards her, his heart in his chest. But this time, there was a sense of purpose in his step. He wasn't here to apologize for the past. He was here to show her, in them, that he could be part of their future. Alara glanced up, her expression unreadable. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him, but she didn't pull away. I thought you'd be busy, she said quietly. There was no anger in her voice, just that same distance he had heard in her words the night before. I'm done with business for today, Liam replied. He paused, not sure how to proceed. I've been thinking about what you said, about how I just walked away. Alara didn't answer right away, her attention shifting back to the boy who was tugging gently at her coat. She knelt down to speak with him, but Liam could see the tension in her shoulders. She was holding herself together, and yet, there was something fragile about her composure. I've been selfish, Liam said, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. I don't know what it means to be a parent, to be a family, but I want to learn. I want to try. Alara stood up slowly, brushing her hands against her coat. She didn't look angry, but she didn't look convinced, either. I don't know if I can let you in, Liam, she said softly. You've missed so much already. They've grown without you, and I don't know how to change that. How do we just pick up where we left off? Liam's heart sank, but he refused to back down. He took a deep breath, his hands clenching at his sides, as if grounding himself to the moment. I don't know, he said honestly, but I can't change the past. I can only start now. Let me prove it to you. Let me show you that I can be here for them. For you. Alara hesitated, looking at him, her eyes full of doubt. But she didn't turn away. And for that, Liam was grateful. I don't need promises, she said finally, her voice low but clear. I need actions. And I need time. I won't let you in just because you say you're sorry. Liam nodded. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't asking for anything except the chance to be there, to prove that he could be more than the man who had failed her before. I'll start with them, he said, his voice gentle but firm. I want to spend time with them. I want to show them I'm not just a stranger. Alara looked at him for a long moment before she nodded, as if considering the weight of his words. Okay, she said quietly. But no promises. Liam smiled, his first genuine smile in days. No promises. Just time. And effort. The boys, who had been watching from the doorway of the store, seemed to sense something was changing. They took cautious steps toward him, not quite sure what to make of this man who had appeared out of nowhere. Liam crouched down, not wanting to tower over them, and smiled warmly. Hey there, he he said, his voice soft. I'm Liam. I'd like to get to know you. The boys stared at him in silence, unsure. Finn, the oldest, looked him up and down, his eyes narrow with suspicion. You're our dad? Finn asked, his voice quiet but curious. Liam nodded, his heart swelling in his chest. Yeah, I am. He watched as the boy processed the information, his small face full of questions. Kai, the more energetic one, stepped forward next, his tiny hands wringing together as he looked up at Liam. What do you do? He asked. Liam chuckled softly. I used to work a lot, he said. But now, I'm here. And I think we should do something fun today. What do you think? The boys exchanged glances, and Liam could see the hesitation in their eyes. They were unsure, still trying to figure out if they could trust him, if he was really going to stay. Liam smiled gently. How about we go get some ice cream? I promise I'm not going anywhere. After a long pause, Leo, the quietest of the four, gave a small nod, his tiny voice barely above a whisper. Okay. It was a small step, but it was a step. Alara watched quietly, her arms folded tightly across her chest. She hadn't said much, but the look in her eyes told Liam everything he needed to know. There was still hope, still a chance. He wasn't perfect, and neither was she, but maybe, together, they could make something work. Liam stood up, offering his hand to the boys. One by one, they took it, tentatively, uncertain, but willing. And for the first time in a long time, Liam felt like he was doing something that truly mattered. Liam had expected everything to feel awkward, and it did at first. But it was a different kind of awkward, the kind that comes with trying to build something real, something from the ground up. He wasn't just trying to fix what he had broken. He was learning how to build a relationship from nothing. Every morning, he found himself up earlier than usual, making breakfast for the boys. It wasn't gourmet, but it didn't need to be. Pancakes, eggs, juice, the usual breakfast chaos. Kai was the first to start a food fight, tossing a piece of toast across the room. Liam, though surprised, laughed it off, getting caught in the mess as the boys roared with laughter. Even Finn, usually so serious, cracked a smile. And Noah, quiet Noah, often hung back, but would glance up from his book every now and then, a small smile playing on his lips. Liam wasn't sure when it happened, but it felt like they were slowly beginning to trust him, slowly beginning to see him as something more than just the stranger who showed up that rainy evening. And for Alara, the wall she had built around her heart had begun to soften, too. At first, she had kept her distance, watching Liam carefully, as if waiting for him to fail again. But the small moments began to add up. The way Liam listened to her when she spoke about art, her dreams, her fears. The way he took the time to read stories to the boys before bed. He was learning, slowly, how to be present in a way that went beyond his wealth and business. But the hardest part wasn't just the everyday moments. It was the quiet moments. The ones when everything seemed fine on the surface, but underneath, the emotions lingered. Alara had been through so much alone, raising 4 boys by herself, never knowing if she was making the right choices. She wasn't used to depending on anyone, and she wasn't sure if she could yet depend on Liam. One evening, as the boys played in the living room, Alara and Liam sat together at the kitchen table, the air heavy with things unsaid. The silence was more comfortable now, but it was still there. I've been thinking, Liam said, breaking the silence. About what you said that night. About not needing money or things. I get it now. I really do. Alara didn't look up, but she nodded slightly. She hadn't expected him to understand so quickly, but there was something different in his tone. His words were genuine, without the usual layer of business talk or empty promises. I know you've been through a lot, Liam continued, his voice soft. And I know I can't undo the past. But I'm not going anywhere. I'm not just here for the boys. I'm here for you too. Alara's hands were resting on the table, her fingers slightly trembling. She didn't know how to react. How could she trust that this wasn't just a temporary change? How could she believe that he wouldn't walk away again? But then, she remembered the small moments, the way he stayed with the boys, how he had stepped up when they needed him. And for the first time, she allowed herself to hope. I'm still scared, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Not for me, but for them. They've already been through so much. And I don't know if they're ready for this, for us, to be a family. Liam's eyes softened as he reached out, placing his hand gently over hers. Neither of us is ready. But we'll take it one day at a time. We'll figure it out together. I'm not asking for perfection, just that we try. Alara stared at his hand for a moment, her chest tightening with a mix of emotions. She had been so used to carrying the weight alone. But now, here was Liam, offering his help, his commitment. She wasn't sure she was ready to fully accept it. But for the first time in a long time, she let herself believe it might be possible. "I don't know if I can believe you completely," she said, her voice trembling. "But I'll try. For them." Liam nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He wasn't asking for all of her trust right away. He knew that would take time. But he was willing to wait, willing to prove that he was here for the long haul. The next day, as the boys ran around the park, laughing and playing with Liam in tow, Alara sat on a nearby bench, watching them. She saw something different in Liam now, something that hadn't been there before. He wasn't just trying to fix things. He was trying to be part of their lives, really part of them. And as she watched him interact with the boys, a small part of her began to relax. Maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. Maybe he could be the father they needed. And maybe, just maybe, they could build something together. But just as she began to feel a glimmer of hope, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her face dropping as she read the message. Her heart sank. It was a message from her sister. "Is Liam really back? The boys deserve better. Don't let him play you again. He'll leave like he always does." Alara stared at the screen for a long moment. Her sister had always been protective of her, but she knew this wasn't just concern. It was fear. And deep down, Alara shared that fear. Could she really trust Liam? Could she let him in without risking everything? Her eyes moved back to the boys, laughing with Liam. Finn had just jumped into Liam's arms, and the two were laughing as Liam pretended to drop him. Leo was grinning, Kai was running circles around them, and Noah stood quietly, watching them with a smile. For the first time in years, Alara allowed herself to believe in something more than fear. Maybe it was time to let go of her doubts and let them try. Alara could feel herself shifting, though she wasn't sure if it was for better or worse. She watched Liam with growing uncertainty and hope as he continued to step into his new role, not just as a father, but as a presence in their lives. The man she had once known seemed so distant from the man before her now, the one who was trying so hard to prove that he could be different. At first, the boys had been cautious with Liam, unsure of his sudden involvement. But over time, they began to warm to him. Finn, the oldest, was the most skeptical, his eyes always watching, sizing Liam up. Kai, the energetic one, was more willing to engage, though his excitement often overwhelmed his ability to trust. Leo, the youngest, clung to Alara the most, his tiny hands reaching for her whenever Liam got too close. And Noah, the quiet one, observed everything with calm intensity, never quite allowing himself to be fully vulnerable. But one by one, they all began to open up in their own ways. Liam had taken them to the zoo, where the boys shrieked with joy at the monkeys, laughed at the penguins, and explored the animal exhibits with wide eyes. He had been there, present, not looking at his phone, not distracted by business. For the first time in a long time, he was fully invested in them as a family. Yet Alara was still on the edge. She wanted to believe it was real, that this wasn't just a phase, that Liam wasn't going to walk away when things got too hard. But the past weighed heavily on her. She had spent so long building walls, protecting herself and the boys. Could she really let them down? Could she really open her heart to him? One evening, after the boys were tucked into bed, Alara found herself sitting on the couch in the living room, staring into the fire. The crackling flames filled the silence, but they did little to quiet the storm inside her. She had spent years alone, trying to make everything work by herself. And now, here was Liam, offering help, offering presence, offering love. Was it enough? She felt the familiar weight of her phone in her pocket. With a deep breath, she pulled it out, her fingers trembling slightly as she unlocked the screen. Her sister's message flashed before her eyes again. "Is Liam really back? The boys deserve better. Don't let him play you again. He'll leave like he always does." She stared at the words, her heart heavy. Was it true? Could she really let go of the fear that had been her constant companion? Could she trust him? Could she trust herself to make the right choice? The soft sound of footsteps behind her broke her thoughts. She turned to find Liam standing in the doorway, watching her quietly. He had a glass of water in his hand, his face thoughtful, like he had been waiting for the right moment to speak. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said gently, stepping into the room. "But I noticed you were still up." Alara sighed, placing her phone face down on the table. She didn't know what to say, how to explain the whirlwind of emotions that had taken over her. "I've been thinking," she said slowly, her voice low, "about everything. About us. About the boys." Liam sat down beside her, the cushions sinking slightly under his weight. He didn't reach for her hand or speak immediately, just waited, patiently, quietly, for her to continue. "I'm scared, Liam," Alara said, her voice breaking slightly. "I've spent so long making sure they were safe, making sure nothing could hurt them. I don't know how to let go of that control. I don't know how to trust again. Especially with them." Liam didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached for the small glass of water, his fingers steady as he took a sip, giving her space to process. When he set it down, he turned to face her. "I'm not asking you to trust me overnight," he said softly. "I'm asking you to let me try. Let me show you that I can be here, for you and for them. I know I've messed up. I can't change that. But I want to be part of this family. I want to help you. I want to help them." Alara looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes were sincere, his face open. For the first time in a long time, she saw a man who wasn't trying to fix things for the sake of fixing them. He was trying to be part of something real. "I don't know how to let go of the fear," she whispered, her voice raw. "I don't know how to trust that you won't just leave us when it gets hard." Liam didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved closer, his presence calming, like a steady force that was willing to wait. He didn't push her. He just let her speak, let her process. "I'm not going anywhere," he said quietly. "I'm here. For good. For all of you." Alara closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of his words sink into her chest. It wasn't a grand gesture, not some sweeping promise. It was just a simple truth, one that meant more than anything else. She opened her eyes and met his gaze, her heart heavy with everything she had been through, everything she had fought to protect. But there, in the quiet, in the stillness between them, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. "I want to believe you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam smiled, just a small curve of his lips, but it was enough. He reached out, his hand gentle on hers. "I'll show you," he said simply. "I'll show you every day." Alara didn't pull away, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope again. The next morning, as the sun streamed in through the windows, she woke up to the sound of the boys laughing in the living room. Liam was already there, sitting on the floor, surrounded by toys and books, with the boys sprawled all around him. He was laughing with them, not just with his usual business smile, but with a real joy that she hadn't expected. In that moment, Alara realized something. She wasn't the only one who had to learn how to trust. Liam was learning, too. And maybe, just maybe, they could build something together. Something real. Something that would last. The days that followed felt like a slow unfolding of something new. Something delicate, yet powerful. For Liam and Alara, their lives were no longer filled with uncertainty, but with small, meaningful moments. Moments that, together, began to form a family. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. Liam had stepped fully into his role as a father, learning not just to provide, but to be there. He attended parent-teacher meetings, took the boys to their first baseball game, and spent quiet evenings at home, reading books or building Lego towers. He was present in a way he had never been before. Not with his wealth, not with his power, but with his time, his attention, and his heart. Alara, on the other hand, had found herself letting go of some of the walls she had built around her. She still had doubts, but they weren't as loud as they once were. Each day, she saw Liam's commitment to her and the boys, and though her heart still carried scars from the past, it was beginning to heal. She allowed herself to hope again. For the first time in years, she started to believe that maybe she didn't have to carry the weight alone. One evening, after the boys had gone to bed, Alara and Liam found themselves sitting together on the couch. The room was quiet, save for the sound of the wind outside. Alara looked over at Liam, who was resting his head against the back of the couch, his eyes half closed with exhaustion, but a small, content smile on his face. "You've really changed," she said quietly, her voice thoughtful. Liam turned to face her, his smile soft but real. "So have you," he replied. "I'm not the man I was when I first walked into this life. And I'm not perfect, but I'm here. For you. For them." Alara felt something stir in her chest. It wasn't just gratitude, though that was part of it. It was something deeper, a quiet certainty that, together, they had built something stronger than just a family. They had built trust. And trust, she realized, was everything. You don't have to be perfect, Liam, she said, her voice steady. You just have to show up. Every day. Liam's eyes softened, and for a moment, the weight of everything, the mistakes, the lessons learned, the struggles, seemed to fade. They were here, now, and that was all that mattered. In that moment, Alara understood something important. She had spent so much of her life trying to protect herself, trying to protect the boys. But now, she saw that protection wasn't just about keeping people out. It was about letting them in, about giving them the chance to be part of her life. She had to trust that they could handle the hard moments. She had to trust that they could handle her. And Liam, he had to trust, too. Trust that he could be the father they needed. Trust that he could be the man Alara needed. Trust that he didn't have to fix everything. Just be present for it all. Liam reached out, his hand gently covering hers. Thank you for giving me a chance. Alara nodded, her heart light with a quiet peace. No thanks necessary, she said softly. We're in this together now. The next morning, they sat at the breakfast table, the boys laughing as they fought over the last piece of toast. The kitchen was filled with noise, but it was the good kind of noise, the kind that came with love, with life, with the messy, beautiful chaos of a family. And as they all sat together, Alara realized something. She didn't have to be perfect, and neither did Liam. Together, they were enough. Their family was enough. And with each passing day, they would continue to grow, to learn, and to love. Life isn't perfect, and neither are we. Sometimes, we make mistakes. Sometimes, we make choices that seem too big to fix. But that doesn't mean the story is over. It's never too late to start again, to build something new, and to make things right. This story is a reminder that healing takes time, but it is always possible. Trust is built, not handed over in a single moment, but earned over time, through actions, patience, and presence. And family, it's not just about blood. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, and giving love freely, even when it scares you. If you're going through a tough time, if you've made mistakes or you're facing obstacles, know that it's okay. Don't give up. Keep showing up. Every day, one small step at a time, you can rebuild, you can heal, and you can grow. No one has it all figured out. But together, we can face anything. If you have enjoyed this story, if it sparked something in your heart, I want to invite you to join me on this journey. Please subscribe to my channel and support its growth. Together, we will continue to tell stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all that hope is never too far away. Let's keep moving forward. Let's keep showing up for ourselves and for each other. Thank you for being part of this journey.